At 6:42 a.m. on May 20th, 1941, Sergeant Alfred Clive Hume stood inside the Field Punishment Center at Platanias, Crete, staring upward as German paratroopers spilled out of the morning sky. They came down in hundreds, then thousands, white parachutes opening above Malim airfield like a swarm of locusts. Hume was 30 years old. He had been a provost sergeant for 8 months. He had never killed a man in combat. The Germans had dropped 3,000 Fallschirmjäger in the first wave. More were already on the way. Hume was responsible for 23 New Zealand soldiers assigned to punishment duty, men arrested for fighting, drunkenness, theft, insubordination. The army called them troublemakers. Hume knew they were still soldiers. And right now, soldiers were all he had. Paratroopers landed everywhere: olive groves, dirt roads, rocky fields surrounding the airfield. Some smashed into stone walls or tangled in their parachutes and died on impact. Others landed cleanly, cut themselves free, and immediately began forming firing positions. The 23rd New Zealand Battalion had been on Crete less than a month. Most of its men had never seen combat. Now they were facing the largest airborne invasion the world had ever seen. Hume didn't wait for orders. He sprinted to the armory, grabbed every rifle he could carry, and handed them out to the prisoners. No paperwork, no authorization, no explanations. The men accepted the weapons without hesitation and followed him toward the sound of gunfire. By midday, Hume had led his improvised unit through 3 separate engagements near Malim airfield. German machine guns raked the ground. Mortars fell among the olive trees. Snipers fired constantly from unseen positions. Hume pushed forward anyway. His men cleared German paratroopers who had landed ahead of the New Zealand defensive line. Isolated groups, ad hoc strongpoints, snipers covering approaches to the airfield. By nightfall, 130 German bodies were counted in the sector. But the real threat revealed itself quickly. German Fallschirmjäger snipers were operating with terrifying effectiveness. Wearing specialized splinter-pattern camouflage smocks and armed with scoped carabiner 98K rifles, they slipped into New Zealand positions and began hunting deliberately. They killed officers first, then radio operators, then anyone who looked important. You couldn't see them. You couldn't suppress them. By the time a muzzle flash appeared, someone was already dead. On May 21st, Hume was moving between forward positions when a rifle cracked. A New Zealand corporal collapsed 10 feet to his left. Another shot, another man went down. Hume dove behind an olive tree and scanned the ridgeline. Nothing. The shooter was invisible. That afternoon, Hume volunteered to hunt the snipers alone. His battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Leslie Andrew, approved. For 2 days, Hume worked independently: slow movement, patient observation, hours spent watching single pieces of terrain. He killed several snipers using conventional counter-sniper tactics. But it wasn't enough. For every sniper eliminated, another appeared. Then, on May 22nd, inside the Field Punishment Center compound, Hume encountered a lone German paratrooper separated from his unit. The German was young, maybe 19. He looked lost. When he saw Hume, he raised his rifle. Hume fired first. 1 shot. Center mass. The paratrooper dropped. Hume rolled the body over. The dead man wore a Fallschirmjäger splinter-pattern camouflage smock, specifically designed to blend into Mediterranean terrain. Beside him lay a carabiner 98K fitted with a Zeiss scope, a standard German sniper configuration. The weapon was immaculate. Hume stood there for a long moment. He thought about New Zealand soldiers dying to invisible rifle fire. He thought about German snipers moving freely because no one could distinguish them at distance. He thought about how many lives he could save if he could get closer, closer than any counter-sniper normally could. He stripped the camouflage smock from the dead German. It was still warm, blood-stained one side, but it was usable. He checked the rifle. 7 rounds in the magazine. 2 spare clips, 47 rounds total. Hume pulled the German smock over his New Zealand uniform and slung the carabiner over his shoulder. He did not ask permission. He did not report his actions. He simply walked toward the German lines. At 0700 on May 23rd, Hume moved through the olive groves west of Malim wearing German camouflage. The splinter pattern broke up his outline perfectly against the trees and stone walls. From 200 yards away, he looked like any other Fallschirmjäger. His first target appeared at 0745. a German sniper hidden in the ruins of a stone farmhouse overlooking the coastal road between Platanias and the airfield. Hume observed him through field glasses. Calm, methodical, deadly. Hume approached openly. No cover, no crouching, just a German soldier returning to position. The sniper glanced at him, registered the camouflage and the rifle, and went back to scanning the road. No challenge, no suspicion. Hume closed the distance. 50 yards, 40, 30. At 25 yards, Hume raised the rifle and fired once. The sniper collapsed without a sound. On the body, Hume found ammunition, grenades, and a detailed map of Maleme Airfield with New Zealand positions marked in pencil. He took the map and moved on. By midday, Hume had killed 3 more snipers using the same method. Walk openly. Get close. Fire once. Each time, the camouflage smock bought him those final seconds. New Zealand commanders noticed immediately. Sniper casualties dropped. Patrols moved in daylight. Radio operators survived long enough to transmit. Officers could stand and observe again. No one knew exactly what Hume was doing. They only knew it was working. On May 24th, Hume went further, moving behind German lines, passing within 10 feet of enemy soldiers who had no idea they were looking at a New Zealand sergeant. The deception held every time. That afternoon near Galatas, a German Oberleutnant approached Hume, gave him an order in German, and pointed toward a ridge to the east. Hume nodded and walked away. The officer never realized he had just given tactical instructions to the enemy. By nightfall on May 24th, Hume had killed 11 German snipers in 3 days. His commander tried to pull him back. Hume refused. German snipers were still killing New Zealanders. Before dawn on May 25th, he went out again. And that morning, the New Zealand division launched its counterattack to retake Galatas. The Germans had turned the Galatas village schoolhouse into a fortress. At the western edge of town, the stone building dominated the approaches. From its upper floors, German machine guns swept the streets, pinning the New Zealand assault flat against rubble and broken walls. The counterattack stalled almost immediately. Men couldn't move. Officers couldn't stand. Every attempt to advance drew precise, controlled fire from the school. The attack was failing. Hume joined the assault. When his platoon was pinned down in the street, he didn't wait for orders or supporting fire. He moved forward alone, slipping through collapsed walls and shattered stone, using the same calm, deliberate movement that had already kept him alive for days. He reached the school building unseen. From his belt, he pulled 3 German stick grenades. He threw them through the ground floor windows in rapid succession. The explosions thundered inside the building. When the smoke cleared, the machine gun was silent. The New Zealanders surged forward. By mid-afternoon on May 25th, Galatas was back in Allied hands after savage house-to-house fighting. But the victory was temporary. German reinforcements arrived during the night, and by the evening of May 26th, the New Zealand division was ordered to withdraw towards Suda Bay. The evacuation of Crete had begun. The island was lost. That night, as units assembled for withdrawal, a runner found Hume in the darkness. The message was written on a torn scrap of paper. Hume read it twice. His younger brother, Corporal Harold Charles Hume, had been killed earlier that day while fighting with the 19th Battalion northeast of Galatas. Hume folded the paper, placed it carefully in his pocket, and picked up the German rifle. His hands were steady. His face showed nothing. But something fundamental had changed. The withdrawal could wait. The German snipers advancing behind the retreating New Zealanders were about to discover what happened when the war became personal. At 0500 on May 27th, Hume positioned himself on a hillside overlooking the road to Suda Bay. Below him, the 23rd Battalion was moving west in a fighting withdrawal. German advance units pressed close behind, attempting to break cohesion and cut off the retreat before Allied troops could reach the beaches. German snipers moved with the advance. Hume counted at least 8 shooters working the ridgelines flanking the withdrawal route. They were doing exactly what doctrine demanded, targeting officers and NCOs to collapse command and control. Hume hadn't slept in nearly 18 hours. Instead, he had spent the night inside German positions, memorizing terrain, observing movement patterns, identifying the most dangerous shooters. Now he began killing them. The first sniper appeared at 0520, climbing a rocky outcrop south of the road. Experienced. Confident. Hume waited until the man settled into position. One shot. The German fell backward and disappeared down the rocks. Hume moved immediately. Never fire twice from the same position. At 0615, he killed the second sniper from a different angle. At 0730, the third, 800 yards west. By 0900, 5 German snipers were dead along a 2-mile stretch of the withdrawal route. The effect was immediate. The rear guard moved faster. Casualties dropped. Formations held. No one knew why. At 1040, Hume spotted 5 German snipers establishing a firing line on high ground overlooking the battalion's exposed left flank. It was a perfect ambush site. If those men stayed in position, the withdrawal would turn into a massacre. Hume approached from the north. He walked openly, wearing German camouflage, rifle slung casually across his chest. The Germans saw him from 400 yards away. One waved. Another called out in German. Hume waved back. At 70 yards, they were relaxed. At 40, one stood and walked toward him, smiling, probably asking where Hume's unit was or whether he'd seen movement. Hume raised the rifle and shot him through the chest. For a fraction of a second, the others froze. One of their own had just killed one of their own. Hume fired again, then again, then again. 4 Germans fell in seconds. The 5th managed to fire once. His bullet passed inches over Hume's head. Hume's return shot did not miss. On the bodies, he found 400 rounds of ammunition, signal flares, binoculars, and written orders. The documents detailed New Zealand withdrawal routes and timings. German intelligence knew exactly where the battalion was going. Hume took the papers and continued. By 1400, his confirmed kills stood at 16 snipers in less than 3 days. His battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Leslie Andrew, found him during a brief halt and asked a direct question. Could he continue operating independently? The sniper casualties were devastating rearguard units across the division. Hume said yes. He did not mention his brother. Andrew handed him written authorization to operate independently for as long as necessary. At 1630, Hume was already forward again, scouting the next withdrawal phase line. The route passed through a narrow valley dominated by steep high ground, perfect sniper terrain. 3 German snipers were already in position. Hume eliminated all 3 before the battalion arrived. The 23rd Battalion passed through the valley without losing a single man to sniper fire. By nightfall on May 27th, Hume had killed 19 German snipers in one day. But the withdrawal wasn't finished. The next day, the battalion would cross even more dangerous terrain toward Stylos, and the Germans would be waiting. At 0430 on May 28th, the battalion began withdrawing west of Galatas toward Stylos. The terrain was exposed. German pressure increased. The rearguard action verged on collapse. Hume moved ahead before dawn. The ridge above Stylos controlled the entire route. At 0515, he reached it and saw the threat. A German heavy mortar crew was setting up on the military crest. 4 men. 1 GRW-34 mortar. They were aiming directly at the withdrawal road. Hume was 800 yards away, too far for a reliable shot. Reporting it would be too slow. Men would die while someone else decided. So Hume walked toward them, across open ground, in full view. The Germans noticed him immediately. One waved. Another called out. Hume waved back. At 50 yards, they returned to their work. At 30, they were laughing. They never realized what they were seeing. At 15 yards, Hume raised the carabiner 98 and fired. The nearest German dropped instantly. Hume worked the bolt and fired again. The second man fell before he could turn. The remaining 2 reached for their weapons. They never got them up. Both went down under controlled, deliberate shots. Hume approached the mortar position. The GRW-34 was already assembled, elevation set, barrel aligned directly onto the withdrawal road below. Ammunition crates stacked beside it held 60 rounds, enough to tear apart an entire battalion moving in the open. Hume pulled the firing pin assembly from the mortar and threw it down the hillside. Then he kicked the ammunition boxes after it. From that position, he could see everything. Using field glasses, he scanned the ridgeline west of Stylos and spotted 3 more German snipers moving into position. They were establishing a coordinated kill zone, preparing to engage the New Zealand rear guard from multiple angles. Hume moved along the ridge toward the first. The German was fully focused on the road below. Hume closed from behind. One shot. The sniper collapsed forward. The second sniper was 200 yards farther west. Hume repeated the approach. Open movement, steady pace, no hesitation. One shot. Another German fell. The third sniper turned when Hume was still 80 yards away. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The German's eyes moved from the camouflage smock, to Hume's face, to the rifle. Something didn't match. Wrong face. Wrong bearing. The German swung his weapon. Hume fired first. The sniper went down, but not before getting off a shot. The bullet hit Hume high in the left shoulder, spinning him sideways. He dropped to one knee, worked the bolt by instinct, and fired again to make sure the German stayed down. Blood soaked through the camouflage smock. The wound was serious. Bone damage, heavy bleeding. Hume tore a strip of cloth from a dead German's uniform and bound his shoulder as tightly as he could. The bleeding slowed, but it didn't stop. His left arm was already failing. At 0830, Hume was still on the ridge when he spotted another German sniper moving into position along the withdrawal route. Target number 34. He raised the rifle one-handed, braced it against the rock, and tried to aim. The scope wavered. His vision blurred. He fired. The shot missed. The German spun, fired back. The bullet struck Hume in the same shoulder, tearing through shattered bone and muscle. Hume fell backward behind the rocks. His left arm was completely useless now. Blood pooled beneath him. He could hear the German moving closer. This was how it ended. Alone on a ridge on Crete. 33 snipers dead. Not 34. The German's boots crunched on gravel. 30 feet. 20. The man was careful, professional, rifle up, angles checked. Hume's right hand closed around a stone. He threw it hard to the left. The rock clattered against stone. The German spun and fired twice. In that instant, Hume rolled right, seized another stone, and hurled it straight at the German's head. The impact staggered him. Hume lunged. Both men went down. The sniper tried to bring his rifle around. Hume wrenched the barrel sideways. The German pulled a knife. Hume headbutted him. Once, twice, felt bone break. The fight ended there. Hume lay on top of the unconscious German, struggling to stay awake. His shoulder was destroyed. The withdrawal route below was silent. The 23rd Battalion had already passed through. Hume was alone. He crawled downhill, dragging his useless arm, following the path his battalion had taken. At 0940, a New Zealand patrol found him collapsed on the road 2 miles from Stylos. He tried to speak. The words wouldn't come. They carried him to the battalion aid station. The medical officer examined the wounds and immediately marked him for evacuation. Both bullets had shattered the scapula. Without surgery, he would lose the arm or die. Lieutenant Colonel Leslie Andrew visited him that afternoon. He told Hume that German sniper activity along the withdrawal route had ceased. The rearguard had suffered minimal losses. The mortar Hume destroyed would have killed dozens. Andrew told him he was being recommended for the Victoria Cross. Hume asked only one question. Had his brother been recovered? There was no answer. On May 30th, Hume was evacuated from Crete aboard a destroyer under air attack. He watched the guns fire from the medical bay. The ship reached Alexandria on June 1st. Surgeons worked for 4 hours. He would never regain full use of his arm. His war was over. He returned to New Zealand in July. On August 20th, confirmation arrived. The Victoria Cross was approved. Hume read the telegram and put it away. 33 German snipers were dead. The battalion had escaped. Crete was still lost. And the question no one asked was the one that mattered most. Whether any of it had changed the outcome at all. On October 10, 1941, the London Gazette published Sergeant Alfred Clive Hume's Victoria Cross citation. The official record listed his actions between May 20th and May 28th. Leading counterattacks near Malim, destroying a machine gun position at Galatas, eliminating 5 snipers near Ceuta Bay, and killing a German mortar crew at Stylos. It recorded that 33 enemy snipers had been stalked and shot. It made no mention of the German camouflage smock. No mention of deception. No mention of walking unchallenged through enemy lines. The New Zealand newspapers ran the story on their front pages. A farm laborer from Dunedin. A Victoria Cross. A man who had hunted German snipers alone behind enemy lines. The public loved it. Hume did not. On November 7th, he traveled to Wellington for the formal presentation at Government House. The Governor-General pinned the Victoria Cross to his uniform. Officials spoke of courage, sacrifice, and the finest traditions of New Zealand service. Photographers crowded in. Hume stood at attention and thought about his brother, lying somewhere on Crete in an unmarked grave. After the ceremony, a reporter asked how it felt to be a hero. Hume said it didn't feel like anything. Asked when he decided to use German equipment, he said there was no moment. He saw an opportunity and took it. Asked if he had been afraid, he said everyone was afraid. Then he walked away. On February 17, 1942, the Army discharged him as medically unfit for combat. His left shoulder had never healed. The joint was shattered. He could not carry a rifle. At 31, Hume returned to civilian life with a Victoria Cross, a useless arm, and no idea where he belonged. The war continued. The 23rd Battalion fought on in North Africa. Men he knew were still dying while he attended civic receptions. In May 1942, the Army recalled him for home defense service, training recruits, administrative work. He served 15 months, reached Warrant Officer Class 2, and was discharged again in September 1943. After the war, Hume moved to Pongakawa, near Taipuk. He bought a small trucking company. He hauled freight. He worked jobs that didn't require two good shoulders. He married Rona Marguerite Makat. They had 2 sons. He never spoke to them about Crete. Never explained the snipers. Never described how he won the Victoria Cross. When veterans groups invited him to speak, he declined. In 1946, he traveled to London for the Commonwealth victory celebrations. He met other Victoria Cross recipients, attended dinners, stood in parades, shook the King's hand. He smiled for photographs and wished he were back in New Zealand, hauling freight. Over the years, historians interviewed veterans of the 23rd Battalion. Some remembered seeing Hume in German camouflage. Others recalled dead snipers with no explanation. One sergeant remembered Hume disappearing for days and returning with ammunition he had never been issued. The legend grew. Hume never corrected it. In 1953, a researcher asked how he felt about killing 33 men. Hume said he felt nothing. Asked if he thought about the Germans, he said he thought about his brother. Asked if he had regrets, he said only one, that the 34th sniper got away. In 1967, his son Denny Hume won the Formula One World Championship. Reporters descended on Pongakawa. They found a trucking manager with a Victoria Cross in a drawer and no interest in talking about war or racing. Hume retired quietly. He attended Anzac Day, but never spoke. When the Queen Elizabeth II Army Memorial Museum requested his medal, he loaned it on one condition: no fuss. On September 2, 1982, Alfred Clive Hume died at Taipuk, aged 71. Natural causes. He was buried at Dudley Cemetery with full military honors. No speeches, no eulogies. Exactly as he wanted. In 2007, his Victoria Cross was stolen from the museum along with 8 others. The theft caused international outrage. All 9 medals were recovered months later, undamaged. The question remained: what had Hume actually achieved on Crete? 33 dead snipers, a Victoria Cross, and a battle the Allies still lost. The Battle of Crete lasted 11 days. 3,500 Allied soldiers were killed, 12,000 captured. The island fell. German losses were severe. So severe that Hitler banned large-scale airborne operations for the rest of the war. But Crete remained German. On the surface, Hume's actions seemed insignificant. 33 men against thousands. A tactical success inside a strategic defeat. But the numbers tell another story. Between May 20th and May 28th, German snipers around Maleme and the Ceuta Bay withdrawal routes killed an estimated 200 Allied soldiers. In the sector where Hume operated, sniper effectiveness dropped by 90% after May 23rd. The 23rd Battalion lost 47 men to snipers in 3 days. After Hume began operating, they lost 6. The difference was 1 man. 33 confirmed kills in 8 days. More than 4 per day. No other documented soldier in the Second World War matched that speed, isolation, and effectiveness. Not by marksmanship alone. By deception. Hume didn't outshoot the snipers. He walked up to them. The risk was absolute. Combatants wearing enemy uniforms forfeited prisoner of war protection. If caught, he would have been executed as a spy. Legally, Hume understood that. He did it anyway. Every time Alfred Clive Hume pulled on the German camouflage smock, He was gambling his life on one assumption, that the deception would hold long enough to get within killing distance. It held 33 times. The tactic was never formally adopted by Allied forces. Military legal advisors rejected it immediately. Wearing enemy uniforms for deception violated multiple international conventions. Combatants caught doing so could be lawfully executed as spies. No appeals. No prisoner of war status. Individual soldiers took note anyway. In later campaigns, a handful attempted similar methods when circumstances allowed. Most did not survive long enough to repeat them. After the war, historians debated whether Hume's actions constituted a war crime. The law was clear: wearing enemy uniforms was illegal. But Hume had not used the disguise to infiltrate civilian areas or commit atrocities. He used it exclusively to kill enemy combatants actively targeting Allied troops. The debate ended pragmatically. No nation was going to prosecute a Victoria Cross recipient for actions that had saved Allied lives during a collapsing campaign. The deeper question was whether Hume's success proved anything useful about military doctrine. Could the German camouflage smock be standardized? Could deception-based counter-sniper tactics be taught? Could ordinary soldiers be trained to do what Hume did? The answer was no. Hume succeeded because of circumstances that could not be reproduced. The chaos of a massive airborne invasion. The dispersed nature of Fallschirmjäger operations. The independence of German sniper teams. The breakdown of unit cohesion during the Allied withdrawal. Remove any one of those conditions, and the deception would have failed immediately. More importantly, Hume possessed qualities that could not be taught. The psychological control to walk calmly toward enemy soldiers while wearing their uniform. The discipline to maintain the act under direct observation. The instinct to know precisely when to stop pretending and fire. Most soldiers did not have those traits. The 23rd Battalion learned that lesson quickly. During later operations in North Africa, several men attempted to replicate Hume's methods. 2 were shot immediately when German troops recognized them as imposters. A third was captured and executed. Battalion orders followed. Enemy uniforms strictly prohibited. Too dangerous. Too unreliable. Too dependent on individual psychology rather than doctrine. Hume remained unique. 1 sergeant. 8 days. 33 dead German snipers. A tactical solution that worked once, under specific conditions, and could never be repeated. For the men of the 23rd Battalion who survived the withdrawal from Crete, that was enough. They knew exactly how many of them would have died had those snipers remained in position. They knew what had been removed from the ridgelines ahead of them. Hume's official Victoria Cross citation contained 163 words. It described his actions between May 20th and May 28th, 1941, leading attacks near Malim, clearing enemy positions at Galatas, destroying a mortar crew at Stylos. The final line noted that he had stalked and shot 33 enemy snipers before being severely wounded. 33. That number appears in every official record, every biography, every military database. 33 confirmed kills in 8 days, operating alone behind enemy lines. No other Allied soldier in the Second World War matched that counter-sniper record in such a compressed time frame. But the number tells only part of the story. Each sniper represented an unknown number of Allied soldiers who lived because that man was no longer in position when a unit passed through his sector. 10 men. 20. 50. The math cannot be calculated precisely. The cumulative effect is clear. Hume saved hundreds of lives, possibly more. Not through strategy, not through command, but through brutal efficiency. Walk toward the enemy. Get close. Shoot first. Repeat until wounded or dead. The German commanders on Crete never understood what happened. After-action reports recorded unexplained losses among sniper teams during the final week of the campaign. Bodies found with no evidence of artillery strikes or air attacks. Single rifle shots. Close range. One German intelligence report speculated that Allied forces had deployed specialized counter-sniper units with suppressed weapons. Another suggested civilian partisan activity. No report identified the truth. One New Zealand sergeant in a stolen uniform. The deception remained unspoken for years. British and New Zealand authorities deliberately avoided publicizing methods that violated international law, even if they had been effective. Hume's citation listed sniper kills, but omitted the camouflage smock entirely. The full story emerged slowly, through veteran interviews and declassified records. By then, Hume had no interest in explaining it. When asked, he always gave the same answer. He saw German equipment that could help him kill German snipers. He took it. He used it. That was all. But that answer avoided the real question. What kind of man could do what Hume did? What psychological makeup allowed someone to walk calmly toward enemy soldiers, knowing that discovery meant immediate execution? Most soldiers could not have sustained that deception for 5 minutes. Hume sustained it for 8 days. The answer appears to be grief, anger, and focus fused into something singular. His brother Harold was killed on May 26th. Hume killed 19 snipers in the 2 days that followed. The timing was not coincidental. The tactics did not change. The calculations did not change. The motivation did. This was no longer only about protecting Allied soldiers. It was about making the Germans pay. That motivation likely kept him alive. Soldiers fighting for abstractions hesitate. Soldiers fighting for something personal rarely do. When Hume walked toward those 5 German snipers on the hillside and opened fire at 40 yards, he was not thinking about doctrine. He was thinking about his brother lying dead somewhere on the same island. Then he went back out and killed more Germans.